This video contains exactly 1 drop of blood and nothing else. Welcome to the Quirks of German X, the series where we don't take a look at the German ports of video games and how they differ to the originals. At least, not today. No, I'd like to talk about a form of censorship that's a bit less common and even lesser known. You may be familiar with recoloring or removing blood, turning enemies into robots, and even erasing all evidence of your deeds. You know, things that can be done in a few minutes and don't require any effort. But what if developers actually tried harder? What if, instead of pretending violence doesn't exist, they removed it altogether? What if your guns didn't shoot bullets, but friendliness pellets? I'm talking about what I have dubbed cute censorship. If you already have to eschew any and all bodily harm, then why not go the whole way? Why not make it look cute and silly? Turning games from gore fests and bloodbaths into birthday fests and regular baths. One video game that did this is Alien Hominid. A Newgrounds classic in which I could never get past the first level as a kid. When ported to consoles, it received the option to disable gore, which was always turned on in the German versions. But not only does it remove blood, it also replaces it with pretty flowers. It's funny that even when they had to censor the game, they kept some of that Newgrounds humor. Like Tom and Dan were saying, we'll make this less violent, but we'll make fun of you for it. Even then, it's not far removed from the original. For instance, you can still bite heads off, which shows a bloody stump for a frame or two. No, we want something more. Flowers alone won't cut it. What we want is something along the lines of Counter-Strike for kids. Just real. And we don't even have to look much further than another Source game, Titanfall 2 Team Fortress 2. In the video that started this whole series, I pointed out that in the German port, bloody jibs were turned into silly jibs. Like the classic springs and gears, but also rubber duckies, burgers, and balloon animals. What's more interesting is the fact that this censorship was essentially turned into a whole feature. Equipping Pyrovision lets you experience how the character Pyro sees the world. Now, different Pyro. So not only are the jibs ridiculous, but the whole world has been turned into a pastel dreamscape right out of My Little Pony. And enemies don't scream in pain when hit, but giggle and laugh. You can't even dominate them, but just become BFFs. But just like in Meet the Pyro, it's only an optional facade to put on and doesn't really count as censorship. Enter the Serious Sam games. Although they were always uncensored, even in Germany, the developers added an option to change blood in the HD remasters. So you can turn it from red to green or off entirely. Or, if you don't want to be boring, you can enable Kids Mode. Now enemies sparkle when hit and explode into candy canes and lollipops when killed. As a healthy alternative, there's even Hippie Mode where fresh veggies pop out instead. It even allows you to plant flowers everywhere. Isn't that pretty? Or maybe you're in a spooky mood and select Halloween, turning all enemies into pumpkins. But like with TF2, this isn't censorship. It's a funny thing you enable for a level or two and that's it. Maybe we need to look elsewhere. Maybe just changing what's already been designed isn't the solution. So what about games that take the exact same gameplay, but rebuild it from the ground up as a more kid-friendly version? Meet Super Noah's Ark 3D, or Super 3D Noah's Ark? Super Noah's 3D Ark? Let's go with funny Bible game. The developer, Wisdom Tree, was familiar with creating Christian games, specifically so they could be sold in Christian bookstores. You know those games that Ned Flanders allows his kid to play? Yeah, they actually made those. And Funny Bible Game was another one on the pile. But this time it was made using Wolfenstein 3D's engine for the Super Nintendo and later ported to PC. The granddaddy of all FPS games turned into a game where you feed goats? Yes, there was no combat whatsoever. The plot is about the animals in Noah's Ark having become very hangry, so you need to feed them and put them to sleep. And that is actual sleep since nobody dies either. Even Noah himself just falls asleep when defeated. The only strange part is that animals will still drop ammo, which in this case are boxes of feed. If they were hungry, why didn't they just eat that? Does it taste better if it gets launched into the face via slingshots? I also question if peppering a giant bear with grains would really fill him up and not just make him even angrier. But you want to hear the absolute kicker? The game is actually good. Like, really good. even more than Wolfenstein 3D at times. Yes, the premise is silly, but the designers still went all out for the level design. They have actual layouts, telegraph secret wars pretty well, and most importantly, weren't just built in a day out of random shapes. And this game can get brutally difficult if you plan hard. I've beaten almost every single part of Wolfenstein, and I've never struggled this much before. The only real parts holding it back are the lack of violence and the fact that stages are very brown. Yeah, setting your game on a giant wooden ship doesn't make for interesting set pieces. Then again, Wolfenstein 3D wasn't that pretty either. It's still impressive that the developers could have released a half-hearted cash grab and called it a day, but they didn't. Now, I don't know how the SNES port plays, but this is excellent. If you're a fan of full 3D's gameplay, genuinely give it a shot. A slingshot. And I think some retro FPS game fans know what's coming next. Another game that took the engine of a beloved shooter and turned it into something you could hand a 4-year-old. I am of course talking about Chex Quest, the game that came for free with certain boxes of Chex cereal back in the 90s. And this one's based on Doom. Even the story within Chex Quest is similar to the original. You're in a space base where aliens have invaded and you need to kick them back out. But unlike in Doom, you don't shoot them, you don't even feed them, though that was the original intention. You just teleport them back to their home planet. Forget non-violent video games, this is downright pacifism. And of course, to encourage healthy habits, the player drinks water and eats fruits and veggies to regain health. And much like Funny Bible Game, this is good. Really good. Stages look like actual real places with distinct locations that make sense. And sprinkled on top is that good old school Doom gameplay, just with snot-based aliens instead of demons. The only downside is that it's rather short and easy, but hey, more Doom is always good. But interestingly, it actually puts somewhat of a spin on the formula. Unlike the previous game, enemies don't drop ammo this time. I mean, they're just snot, where would they even keep it? This means you have to be slightly more conservative with what weapons you use and when. Using the Super Boot Spork, the replacement for the chainsaw, actually becomes a common strategy. Even the weapon order has been changed up. You get the plasma rifle equivalent in the second level, meaning you can use it as much as you would use the shotgun. In fact, the replacement for the shotgun is only obtained after you've found pretty much every other weapon. You can tell that the developers love Doom and wanted to create something fun and unique. Because that's precisely what happened. They even came back years later to touch up both the original Chex Quest and its rushed sequel, and even made a new third episode. This was a free game that came in boxes of cereal, precisely to promote said cereal. It could have been full of empty rooms and random mazes, just a cheap way to make a quick buck. Instead, it's a love letter to both Doom and its modding community. An experience that doesn't feel lesser, but one that goes hand in hand with the original. And that's really the lesson to take away from all of this. Cute censorship is fine, but you really gotta commit to it. Just changing the color of blood is lame, but only replacing it with hearts or flowers isn't interesting either. You gotta go the entire way. If gibs are wind-up teeth and balloons, then why not turn everyone into a clown like what Pyrovision did? Well, because it's a lot more work, and ultimately, it's not what people buy these games for. If you see a cool shooter being advertised somewhere, you want exactly that. Not a version of it which seems to almost mock you for wanting to play it. It makes for a neat distraction, but not much more. The best option to offering kid-friendly versions of violent games is to simply make your own from scratch. Serious Sam 2, for instance, while still violent, offers a lot less blood and gore like previous games. Instead, enemies explode into all kinds of colorful effects. And you know what? I love it, it's fun. It's my favorite game in the series for a reason. Doing it this way allows you to take full advantage of the lack of gore. You're not playing catch-up, you're leading the way. And this also applies to all games. It's no wonder that kids flock to violent shooters because they're fun to play. They're messy and exciting. So if there's no viable alternatives, you really can't blame them for consuming media that might not be suitable for them. And if you just censor them, then you only ruin them for all other players. Luckily, developers seem to have realized this. Games like Overwatch and especially Fortnite don't have any gore at all, making them much more appropriate for everyone. And they're still a ton of fun. Because the lack of blood isn't the issue, it's removing something from a game that everything else has been built around. So please let's continue on this route, because in the end, we all benefit from it. But what do you think? Are there any examples of cute censorship that I might have missed? Maybe you actually think it adds a lot after all. Please let me know down below. And if you've enjoyed the video, then please tell me that as well. You can also leave a like, subscribe, and donate to my Patreon to support me directly. For just $1 a month, you can watch new videos 1 week earlier than everybody else. Anything is appreciated. But for now, thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and goodbye.